All right, welcome back to ABA exam review and the continuation of our fifth edition task list series where we're going through H, selecting and implementing interventions, and continuing with H2, identify potential interventions based on assessment results and the best available scientific evidence. This is a pretty straightforward topic. We're really just going to discuss what kind of assessments you can do and what to do with that information. Assessments are so broad, so individualized, and so dependent on what you're trying to achieve that the information here has to be broad. And so don't overthink this section. Just remember, when doing an assessment, we want to observe the behavior directly and then use that information to design the best intervention we can. Don't forget, we will be doing this for the sixth edition as well. So be sure to subscribe for all the fifth and sixth edition content. Check out behavioranalyst.study.com for all of our study materials. When you pass, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. All right, so H2. Now, again, a direct assessment at minimum should be completed prior to choosing and implementing a behavioral intervention. Your primary job as the analyst is designing and picking interventions, and you can't do that without direct observation of the behavior. Indirect assessments are not enough, and we're going to talk about the difference. But you have to keep in mind, you need to be directly observing these behaviors before choosing your intervention. This is why we're talking about interventions based on results. It's not hunches or feelings, it is results. So what should we focus on? We want to gather information about the environment. Remember, behavior and environment go hand in hand. One affects the other, and they react to each other. So whatever environment you're going to be working in, whatever environment you might be generalizing to, you need to start gathering information about and then taking that into account when choosing your intervention. That includes people, things, pets, whatever it may be that are around your client. Identify potential target behaviors for increase and decrease. So not only can we do assessments on problem or challenging behavior, but we can also start looking for skills. What kind of skills can we teach? What can we give our client to make their lives better? Identifying potential functions. Of course, we're always looking for functions. We have to, need to identify functions of behaviors before interventions, because how are we going to know the consequences of, let's say we're using extinction, if we don't know the function? And then identify your goals and interventions. This should come last. Once we've done our assessment, we have our results, we can choose our goals, we can choose our interventions. And again, those go hand in hand. Your intervention should help you meet your goal. Now think about who has the authority to do the assessment. Your technician should not be doing your assessments. Now, can they do preference assessments? Absolutely. Can they do short, direct assessments? Sure. But if we're talking about new behaviors, new skills, new treatments, you need to be the one out there doing those assessments, or at least leading those assessments. And then what existing data can you use? Do we have medical records? Do we have educational records? Do we have historical therapy records? Let's start with indirect assessments. Now, indirect assessments can be very valuable, but you've got to keep in mind when you're doing indirect assessments, you're receiving biased information. Think about a mom talking about their own kid and how they're going to talk about their kid versus you, outside observer, might observe their kid. You're going to be very, very careful and take everything with a grain of salt when you're doing indirect assessments. That could include interviews, checklists, surveys, and of course, historical records. Indirect assessments are any assessment without observing the behavior. You're sitting down with the stakeholders and you're talking to them. You are looking at prior treatment plans from the previous ABA company. These are indirect assessments that are going to give you a lot of background. They're going to be helpful, but we cannot design and choose interventions based off indirect assessments alone. These should never be enough to select and design your interventions. In order to do that, we have to do direct assessments. These are observations of the behavior itself. And at minimum, you should be performing the direct assessments. at least the initial ones before the intervention gets started. Once the intervention is in place, if you're just making small modifications, that's a little different. But if we've got a brand new skill, a brand new behavior, you need to be out there leading and guiding that assessment. Common direct assessments, ABC narrative recordings, anecdotal recordings, so antecedents and consequences and behaviors, event recording, how often it happens, and of course our functional analyses where we're actually identifying, okay, what is the function of a certain behavior. Always keep in mind, the better your direct assessments, the better your treatment plan will be. If you are lazy during your assessments, your job is going to be more difficult. Put a lot of time and a lot of effort into the assessments, and everything else becomes so much easier. Finally, ecological assessments. If you want to do an ecological assessment, which I always recommend, focus on the environment. So what environment are you teaching in? Is it a clinic? Is it a home? Is it a school? What's going on in that environment? Is it clean? Is it dirty? Is it loud? Is it quiet? Is there a lot of stimuli? Is there not a lot of stimuli? Is it aversive? Think about these things. These are all things you want to consider because that's going to be the environment that behavior is going to start being shaped in, reinforced in, and punished in, and so on and so forth. Think about, what is the environment like? What about the variables? What's relevant to the behavior or your intervention? And then finally, following your assessment, your intervention should be individualized and empirical. That means we are choosing based on our results, so data, and what do our data show, and then the best available scientific evidence. Best available means we have to just do our best given the information and evidence we have. A lot of things you do are going to be trial and error, and that's okay. If your intervention fails, change it, move on. But you've got to choose something, you've got to design something, and it's got to be based on your best knowledge, given your data and given the scientific evidence. Excellent. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe for all of our updates. We post BCBA videos 3 times a week. We also have RBT materials for you to share with your technicians. Check out behavioranalyst.study.com for all of our study materials. Let us know when you pass. Work hard, study hard. We'll see you soon.